My name is Chloe Martinez. I'm 29 years old, and until 3 months ago, I thought I was living the perfect dancer's dream. I had it all: a successful career as a professional choreographer, brand partnerships with major fitness companies, and a marriage to Marcus, the most sought-after dance instructor in Los Angeles. We were the golden couple of the dance world. Everyone wanted to be us. Everyone wanted what we had. But here's the thing about perfect lives. They're usually built on perfect lies. And I'm about to tell you a story that will make you question everything you think you know about love, betrayal, and revenge. Because what I discovered wasn't just an affair. What I uncovered was so much deeper, so much more twisted, that by the time I was done, I didn't just destroy my cheating husband. I accidentally exposed an entire network of lies that reached into places I never imagined. Stay with me until the end. Trust me, you're going to need to hear every single word of this story. Because the truth I uncovered, it's going to change how you see everyone around you forever. It started on a Tuesday morning in March. I remember because Tuesdays were always our lazy mornings. Marcus didn't have classes until noon, and I usually worked from our home studio, creating choreography for my online courses. We'd make coffee together, share breakfast, maybe even squeeze in a quick dance session in our living room. That morning felt different, though. Marcus was on his phone before his feet even hit the floor. His fingers were flying across the screen with an urgency I'd never seen before. When I rolled over to give him his usual good morning kiss, he actually pulled away. "Sorry, babe," he mumbled, not looking up from his phone. "Emergency at the studio. Jenny's having issues with the new intermediate routine." Jenny, 22 years old, blonde, flexible, and according to Marcus, naturally gifted but needs extra attention. She'd been taking his advanced classes for about 6 months, and lately, her name seemed to come up in our conversations more than I was comfortable with. "Can it wait until you get there?" I asked, trying to keep my voice light. "We haven't had a morning together in weeks." "You know how important it is to catch technique problems early," he said, finally looking at me. But his eyes were different, distant, like he was looking through me instead of at me. "I'll make it up to you tonight, I promise." He kissed my forehead, not my lips, my forehead, like I was his sister, and was out the door in 15 minutes. I lay there in bed, staring at the ceiling, trying to shake the feeling that something fundamental had shifted in my world. But I pushed it down. I was Chloe Martinez. I was strong, successful, and secure in my relationship. I didn't do jealousy. I didn't do insecurity. I did trust and communication and all the things that relationship experts said made marriages work. Except trust, I was about to learn, was the most dangerous thing you could give someone who didn't deserve it. The next few weeks blurred together in a pattern I should have recognized sooner. Marcus leaving early, coming home late, always with perfectly reasonable explanations. The studio was expanding. They were preparing for a big competition. Jenny needed extra help because she was competing for a scholarship. Jenny, Jenny, Jenny. Her name became the soundtrack to my suspicions, but I kept telling myself I was being paranoid. Marcus and I had been together for 4 years, married for 2. We'd built our entire life around dance, around each other, around the dreams we shared. He wouldn't throw that away for some young student, would he? The first real crack in my perfect world came on a Thursday night. I was working late in our home studio, perfecting a new routine for a brand campaign, when I heard Marcus's key in the lock. It was almost midnight, much later than usual, even for his recent standards. "Hey, babe," I called out, not looking up from the mirror. "How was the late session with Jenny?" Silence. I turned around to find Marcus frozen in the doorway, his face pale. "What did you say?" "I asked how your session went with Jenny. You texted me you'd be late because she needed extra help with her turns." He ran a hand through his dark hair, a gesture I knew meant he was nervous. "Yeah, it was good. She's really improving. But here's the thing about being a professional dancer, you learn to read body language like a second language. And Marcus's body was screaming lies. His shoulders were tense, his weight shifted away from me, and he wouldn't meet my eyes." "That's great," I said, watching him carefully. "Maybe I should meet her soon. It sounds like she's becoming a really important part of the studio." "She's just a student, Chloe." His voice was sharper than I'd ever heard it directed at me. Nothing more. That night, Marcus showered immediately when he got home. He never showered at night, always in the morning. But there he was, washing away something I couldn't see but could somehow sense. I lay in bed, listening to the water run, and felt the first real stab of fear pierce through my denial. Because deep down, in the place where instinct lives, I already knew the truth. I just wasn't ready to face it yet. The signs started multiplying after that. Phone calls he'd taken the other room, texts that made him smile in ways I hadn't seen in months, new cologne that he claimed was just something different, late nights that became later nights. And then there was the way he looked at me. Or rather, the way he'd stopped looking at me. We used to catch each other's eyes across a room and share these secret smiles, these moments of connection that made me feel like we were the only two people in the world. Now, when our eyes met, his would slide away like I was a stranger he was trying to avoid. It was killing me slowly, this death by 1,000 small betrayals. But I still didn't have proof. And part of me, the part that had believed in fairy tales and happily ever after, desperately hoped I was wrong. Maybe Marcus was just stressed. Maybe I was being paranoid. Maybe this was just a rough patch that all marriages went through. Maybe. Until the night I stopped believing in maybes. It was a Friday in April. Marcus had left for what he said was a studio meeting with other instructors to plan the summer showcase. I was supposed to be at a brand event downtown, but it got canceled at the last minute due to the venue having some kind of emergency. I decided to surprise Marcus at the studio. Maybe we could grab dinner, or I could watch him work on some new choreography. Maybe we could reconnect, remember why we fell in love in the first place. The studio was in a converted warehouse in Arts District, all exposed brick and industrial lighting that looked amazing in photos. Marcus had worked so hard to build his reputation there, and I was genuinely proud of what he'd accomplished. I used my key to get in through the back entrance, planning to surprise him. The main studio lights were off, but I could see a glow coming from Studio B, the smaller, more intimate space Marcus used for private lessons. I could hear music playing softly, something slow and sensual that definitely wasn't typical for a faculty meeting. My heart started beating faster, and not in a good way. I crept closer to the studio, my dance training making my footsteps silent on the polished concrete floor. Through the window in the door, I could see two figures moving together in the dim light. Marcus and Jenny. But they weren't dancing. Not the kind of dancing you'd see in any legitimate studio, anyway. They were pressed against the mirrored wall, her legs wrapped around his waist, his hands tangled in her blonde hair. She was wearing one of those barely there sports bras and tiny shorts that left nothing to the imagination. He was shirtless, his wedding ring catching the light as his hands roamed her body. I stood there, frozen, watching my husband, my partner, my best friend, the man I'd trusted with my whole heart, betray everything we'd built together. The worst part wasn't just seeing them together. It was seeing how he looked at her, the way he used to look at me. The intensity, the desire, the complete absorption in another person's existence. When had he stopped looking at me like that? When had I become invisible in my own marriage? I don't know how long I stood there. Time seemed to move differently, like I was underwater or in a dream. But eventually, my survival instincts kicked in, and I backed away from the door, my heart hammering so loud I was sure they'd hear it. I made it to my car before the tears came. Great, ugly sobs that seemed to come from somewhere so deep inside me that I didn't know it existed. I sat in that parking lot for almost an hour, crying for the marriage I thought I had, for the man I thought I knew, for the future I thought we were building together. When I finally drove home, I felt like a different person. The naive, trusting Chloe who had left the house that morning was gone forever. In her place was someone harder, someone who now understood that love could be a weapon and trust could be a fatal mistake. Marcus came home 2 hours later, showered and smiling, with some elaborate story about the meeting running long and grabbing drinks afterward. "How was your event?" he asked, kissing my cheek like nothing had happened. "It was canceled," I said, watching his face carefully. For just a split second, I saw panic flash in his eyes. Then it was gone. replaced by that practiced smile I was beginning to recognize. Oh, that's too bad. We could have spent the evening together. Yeah, I said. We could have. That night, I lay awake next to my cheating husband, staring at the ceiling and planning my next move. Because here's what Marcus didn't know about me. I wasn't the kind of woman who fell apart when the world crumbled around her. I was the kind of woman who rebuilt it exactly the way she wanted it. And I was about to show him just how creative a professional choreographer could get when it came to planning the perfect performance. The hardest part about discovering your husband's affair isn't the initial shock. It's the days that follow, when you have to pretend everything is normal while your entire world has been turned upside down. It's looking at the man you loved and seeing a stranger wearing his face. It's wondering how long you've been living a lie and how much of your relationship was real. But I'm a professional performer. I know how to put on a show. So I smiled and made coffee and asked about his day like a good wife should. I kissed him goodbye in the mornings and welcomed him home at night. I played the role of blissfully unaware spouse, while internally, I was conducting the most thorough investigation of my life. Because if I was going to destroy Marcus and Jenny, I needed to know exactly what I was dealing with. The first thing I did was install a tracking app on Marcus's phone. I know, invasion of privacy and all that. But he'd already invaded our marriage with another woman, so I figured we were past the point of playing by traditional rules. It wasn't even that hard. Marcus had always been careless with technology, leaving his phone unlocked on counters and never thinking to hide anything from me. Why would he? I was just his trusting wife who'd never question him. The tracking app revealed a pattern that made my stomach churn. 3 times a week, Marcus would tell me he was staying late at the studio or meeting with other instructors, but his phone would show him at Jenny's apartment across town. And these weren't quick visits. We're talking 3, 4, sometimes 5-hour sessions. How had I been so blind? But location data was just the beginning. I needed evidence, real, concrete proof that would leave no room for manipulation or gaslighting, so I became a detective. I started by going through our shared computer, looking for any digital breadcrumbs Marcus might have left behind. What I found made me physically sick. Email threads with Jenny that went back 4 months. 4 months. This wasn't some recent temptation or moment of weakness. This was a calculated, ongoing affair that had been happening right under my nose. The emails started professional enough. Discussions about technique, scheduling private lessons, feedback on her progress. But they quickly became more personal. Marcus complimenting her natural grace and incredible flexibility. Jenny thanking him for believing in her and pushing her to be better. Then came the photos. Jenny had been sending Marcus pictures of herself practicing various poses and positions. Some were technically dance-related, but others were clearly meant to seduce. And Marcus had been responding with encouragement, telling her she was absolutely stunning, and that he couldn't wait to see her improvements in person. I screenshot everything. Every email, every photo, every flirtatious exchange. I created a folder on my laptop labeled Choreography Research. Marcus would never think to look there, but the emails were just the tip of the iceberg. I decided to follow them. I know how that sounds. Crazy ex-wife stalking her cheating husband. But I needed to understand the full scope of what I was dealing with. Were they just having sex, or was this something deeper? Was Jenny just a naive young woman being manipulated by an older married instructor, or was she a willing participant in destroying my marriage? The answers, as it turned out, were more complicated than I'd expected. Their routine was depressingly predictable. Marcus would text me that he was staying late at the studio or meeting with other instructors. Then he'd drive to Jenny's apartment. A cute little place in Silver Lake that probably cost more than she could afford on a dance student's budget. I followed them on 3 separate occasions, parking down the street like some kind of low-rent private investigator. What I saw through Jenny's windows, she really needed to invest in better curtains, wasn't just sex. It was intimacy. They cooked dinner together. They danced in her living room to music I couldn't hear. They cuddled on her couch, watching movies. Marcus was living an entire second life with this girl, complete with all the romantic gestures he'd stopped making with me. That hurt worse than the physical betrayal, somehow. I could have understood a purely sexual affair, a moment of weakness, a midlife crisis, something that had nothing to do with our relationship. But this was Marcus choosing another woman over me, choosing to build something new and exciting with her, while letting what we had die a slow death. But my surveillance revealed something else, something that would prove crucial to my revenge plan. Jenny wasn't just any dance student. She was ambitious, ruthlessly, desperately ambitious. Through the windows of her apartment, I could see the walls covered with competition flyers, scholarship announcements, and audition notices. She had her sights set on joining a major dance company, and she saw Marcus as her ticket there. This wasn't a love story. This was a transaction. Jenny was sleeping with Marcus because she believed he could advance her career. And Marcus? He was risking everything for a young woman who saw him as a means to an end. That gave me an idea. A terrible, beautiful, perfectly choreographed idea. But first, I needed more information. I started paying attention to the other instructors at Marcus's studio, striking up conversations when I dropped by to see him. What I learned was that Jenny wasn't the only young attractive student Marcus had taken a special interest in over the years. Sarah, the receptionist, was happy to gossip once I got her talking. "Oh, Marcus has always been popular with the students," she said with a knowing smile. "Some of the other instructors joke that he should charge extra for private motivation sessions." My blood ran cold. "What do you mean?" "Nothing serious," Sarah backtracked, probably seeing something in my face. "Just that he's really good at making students feel special, like they're the most talented person he's ever worked with." I pressed for more details, but Sarah clammed up. Still, I'd heard enough to understand that Marcus's affair with Jenny wasn't an isolated incident. It was a pattern. That night, I did more digging online. I searched through the social media accounts of former students, looking for any clues about inappropriate relationships. What I found was a trail of young women who'd studied with Marcus, posted glowing reviews about his personal attention, and then suddenly stopped attending the studio. I reached out to a few of them, claiming I was writing an article about dance instruction and student-teacher relationships. Most didn't respond, but one girl, Maya, agreed to talk. "Marcus is an incredible instructor," she told me over the phone. "Really talented, really supportive, but he can be intense with certain students." "Intense how?" There was a long pause. "I don't want to say anything that might get him in trouble, but let's just say he blurs boundaries sometimes. With students he thinks have special potential." "Did he ever blur boundaries with you?" Another pause. "I'd rather not discuss the details, but I will say that I left his studio because the situation became uncomfortable." I thanked Maya and hung up, my hands shaking with rage. Marcus wasn't just cheating on me with Jenny. He was a predator who used his position of authority to manipulate young women who trusted him. That changed everything. This wasn't just about revenge for adultery anymore. This was about exposing a man who had been abusing his power for years, destroying the dreams and self-worth of students who'd come to him for guidance. I thought about all the young women who'd probably blamed themselves when things went wrong with Marcus, who'd thought they'd misread signals or been too sensitive or somehow brought it on themselves. Not anymore. I was going to make sure Marcus faced consequences for every woman he'd manipulated, every student he'd betrayed, every life he'd damaged in pursuit of his own selfish desires. But I couldn't just go to the studio owner with accusations. I'd look like a jealous wife trying to destroy her husband's career. I needed proof that was so clear, so undeniable, that no one could ignore it. More importantly, I needed a plan that would expose Marcus in a way that would resonate far beyond just our little dance community. I wanted the whole world to see exactly who he really was. And that's when inspiration struck. I was scrolling through TikTok one evening, watching the latest viral dance challenges, when I saw it. A simple routine that had exploded across social media, with thousands of people posting their own versions. The original creator had become an overnight sensation, gaining millions of followers and landing brand deals worth more than most people made in a year. The power of viral content was incredible. One well-crafted video could reach more people than traditional media ever could. And if you could tap into the right emotions, the right cultural moments, you could control the narrative completely. That's when I knew exactly how I was going to destroy Marcus and Jenny. I was going to create a dance challenge that would expose their affair to the entire world, but not in an obvious way. That would be too easy to dismiss or defend. No, I was going to be subtle, artistic, devastating. I was going to choreograph their destruction. Over the next week, I started putting the pieces together. I mapped out every location where Marcus and Jenny had their secret meetings. Not just her apartment, but the coffee shop where they'd meet beforehand, the park where they'd walk afterward, even the specific studio where I'd caught them together. I studied their body language from all those hours of surveillance, noting their distinctive movements, the way they touched each other, the gestures that were uniquely theirs. And then I started creating. The dance I choreographed was beautiful on the surface, sensual, romantic, the kind of routine that would naturally attract attention on social media. But embedded within it were subtle references to Marcus and Jenny's affair, movements that mimicked their secret embraces, gestures that recreated their private moments, a story told through dance that only they would fully understand. At least, at first. I called it the Secret Places Challenge, and I designed it to be performed in locations that held significance to cheating couples. Parking lots, hotel lobbies, dance studios after hours, places where people went to hide their relationships. The challenge would start innocently enough. People would see a beautiful dance and want to participate. But as more and more videos were posted, patterns would emerge. The locations would become recognizable. The movements would start to make sense. And slowly, inevitably, people would begin to piece together the story I was telling. But the dance was just the beginning. I needed to seed it properly, make sure it reached the right audience at the right time. I created fake social media accounts and started following dance influencers, studio accounts, and local Los Angeles performers. I studied the algorithms, learned the best times to post, figured out which hashtags would give me maximum reach. I was going to turn Marcus and Jenny's affair into the most viral dance challenge of the year, and they wouldn't even see it coming until it was too late. The night before I planned to launch my challenge, I lay in bed next to Marcus, listening to him sleep peacefully beside me. He had no idea what was about to hit him. No clue that his loving wife had spent weeks documenting his every betrayal and was about to expose him to the world. "Sweet dreams, darling," I whispered in the darkness, because after tomorrow, neither of us would be sleeping peacefully for a very long time. I launched the Secret Places Challenge on a Thursday morning and at 9 a.m. Pacific time, prime posting time for maximum engagement on social media. I'd been planning this moment for 3 weeks, and every detail was choreographed to perfection. The video I posted was stunning, if I do say so myself. I'd filmed it in 5 different locations around Los Angeles, each one chosen specifically for its connection to Marcus and Jenny's affair. The dance itself was hypnotic, a sensual, flowing routine that told the story of secret meetings and hidden desires. But here's the genius part. To anyone who didn't know the real story, it just looked like a beautiful, mysterious dance challenge. The kind of content that naturally goes viral on social media. I posted it from an account I'd created called @SecretPlacesLA with a carefully crafted caption. Some stories can only be told through movement. Secret Places Challenge, Dance Your Truth, LA Dance, Viral Dance. Then I sat back and watched the magic happen. Within 2 hours, the video had 1,000 views. By lunch, it was at 50,000. Dance influencers I'd been following started reposting it with comments like, "This is absolutely mesmerizing," and "Who is this choreographer? This is incredible." But the real breakthrough came when Dance Trend LA, an account with 2.3 million followers, shared my video with the caption, "This is giving me chills. The emotion, the locations, the story, someone needs to break this down because I feel like there's something deeper here." That's when things exploded. The video hit 1 million views by evening. Dance studios across LA started posting their own versions. Students, instructors, even some celebrities jumped on the trend. Secret Places Challenge was trending in Los Angeles and starting to spread nationally. But the most beautiful part? Marcus had no idea I was behind it. He came home that night complaining about how all his students were distracted by some new dance challenge they'd seen online. "It's everywhere," he said, scrolling through his phone. Even Jenny was asking if we could incorporate some of these moves into her routine. I nearly choked on my wine. "Oh, really? What kind of moves?" "Just some dramatic, overly emotional stuff. You know how these viral dances are, more about the performance than the technique." If only he knew he was watching a performance of his own betrayal. By Friday morning, something incredible was happening. People weren't just copying the dance. They were starting to analyze it. Dance enthusiasts and internet sleuths were dissecting every movement, every location, looking for the deeper meaning they sensed was there. A TikTok user named Dance Detective posted a video that made my heart race. "Okay, I've watched this challenge like 50 times, and I'm convinced there's a story being told here. Look at these locations. They're all places where couples would meet secretly. And these movements? They're not random. Someone is telling us about an affair." The comments on that video were incredible. "OMG, you're right. The way the dancer moves in the parking lot scene, that's how you act when you're trying not to be seen. And the studio scene, those movements are so intimate but also guilty looking. This is like a confession told through dance. I'm obsessed." By Saturday, Secret Places Challenge had over 50 million views across all platforms. But more importantly, people were starting to post their own versions in specific locations around LA. And some of those locations were very familiar to me. A group of dancers from USC posted their version in the exact coffee shop where Marcus and Jenny had their first secret meeting. Another team did theirs in the park where they'd walk after their private lessons. Someone even filmed in the lobby of Jenny's apartment building. Marcus was starting to look uncomfortable. I caught him staring at his phone with a frown more than once, and he'd started taking calls in the other room again. But this time, he seemed agitated rather than secretive. "Everything okay?" I asked Saturday evening, watching him pace the kitchen while texting furiously. "It's this stupid dance challenge," he muttered. "Some of the students are getting carried away with it. They want to film at the studio after hours, and they're asking about using locations that aren't appropriate for promotion." My heart started beating faster. "What kind of locations?" "Just inappropriate ones. I had to tell Jenny she absolutely cannot film anything at her apartment building. It's unprofessional." "Jenny?" He'd said her name with such automatic familiarity that he didn't even realize how it sounded. Like someone he talked to constantly, worried about constantly, thought about constantly. "That's probably wise," I said, taking a sip of my wine to hide my smile. "You wouldn't want people getting the wrong idea about your relationship with students." He shot me a sharp look, but I kept my expression innocent. Just a supportive wife offering perfectly reasonable advice. By Sunday, the challenge had truly gone viral. It was being covered by entertainment news outlets, and dancers from around the world were posting their own interpretations. But the LA dance community was particularly obsessed, and that's when things started getting dangerous for Marcus and Jenny. Someone posted a version filmed outside the exact restaurant where Marcus had told me he was having instructor meetings while actually having dinner with Jenny. Another person did their routine in the parking lot of Jenny's apartment complex. The internet was starting to connect the dots, even if they didn't know they were connecting them. Then came the breakthrough I'd been waiting for. A popular Instagram account called @LaDanceGossip posted a story that made my pulse race. Anyone else notice that all these #Secret Places challenge videos are being filmed at spots around LA where interesting things happen? Someone in the dance community is definitely trying to tell us something. Any guesses what this is really about? The comments exploded. "Wait, I know that studio. That's where Marcus Rivera teaches." "OMG, and isn't that coffee shop right near his place?" Why would someone choreograph a dance about secret affairs using locations connected to a specific instructor? Marcus Rivera, isn't he married to Chloe Martinez, the choreographer? That's when I knew it was time for phase 2. I created a new video for @SecretPlacesLA. This one filmed entirely in locations that Marcus and Jenny had used for their affair. But I made it more obvious this time. The dance movements directly mimicked gestures I'd seen them make together. The timing synced with moments from their secret meetings. And in the caption, I included a single, devastating line. Sometimes the truth dances in plain sight. # Secret Places Challenge, Truth in Movement, Ella Dance Scene. Within hours, the dance community was in chaos. People started posting side-by-side comparisons of my challenge videos with photos they'd taken at various dance events, noting how the movements seemed to reference specific couples, specific interactions they'd witnessed. At Dance Detective posted a follow-up video that sent chills down my spine. Y'all, I think this challenge is about a specific affair in the LA dance scene. The locations, the movements, the timing. Someone is telling us exactly where and how this affair happened. This isn't just art. This is exposure. That's when Marcus finally started to panic. He came home Monday night looking like he'd seen a ghost. His hands were shaking as he poured himself a drink, something he rarely did on weeknights. "Everything okay, honey?" I asked, watching him carefully. "This dance challenge is getting out of hand," he said, not meeting my eyes. "People are starting to make up stories, spreading rumors about instructors and students. It's getting toxic." "What kind of rumors?" "Just inappropriate speculation about professional relationships. The studio owner is concerned about the negative attention." I bet he was. Because by now, # Secret Places Challenge had over 100 million views, and the LA dance community was buzzing with theories about which instructor and student were being exposed. Marcus's phone kept buzzing with notifications. He'd look at the screen, his face would go pale, and he'd put the phone face down on the table. "Maybe you should take a break from social media for a while," I suggested sweetly. "All this negative energy can't be good for your creative process." He nodded absently, but I could see him fighting the urge to check his phone every few seconds. That night, I heard him on a hushed phone call in the bathroom. I couldn't make out all the words, but I caught enough. "Getting too close. Need to be more careful. Maybe we should cool things down for a while." Jenny. He was talking to Jenny, and they were finally starting to realize that their secret wasn't as secret as they'd thought. But it was too late. The internet had caught the scent, and once the viral mob decides to solve a mystery, nothing can stop them. Tuesday morning brought the development I'd been orchestrating for weeks. A dance student from Marcus's studio, someone I'd never met but who'd been following the challenge closely, posted a video that changed everything. She'd been filming her own version of the challenge at the coffee shop when she happened to capture Marcus and Jenny in the background, clearly on a romantic date. Wait, she captioned the video. "I was just filming my Secret Places challenge when I caught this. Isn't that Marcus Rivera, the married instructor? And isn't that Jenny from his advanced class? This is getting weird." The video went viral within hours. The dance community exploded. Comments poured in from current and former students, people sharing their own observations about Marcus and Jenny's special relationship, screenshots of flirtatious social media interactions, photos from studio events where they seemed unusually close. By Wednesday, entertainment blogs were picking up the story. Viral dance challenge exposes alleged affair in LA dance scene. Read the headline on one major site. Marcus was completely unraveling. He barely ate, constantly checked his phone, and jumped every time someone knocked on the door. The studio had suspended him, pending an investigation into inappropriate conduct with students. Jenny, meanwhile, had deactivated all her social media accounts and stopped attending classes. But the internet doesn't forget, and it doesn't forgive. People had saved screenshots of everything. Every flirtatious comment, every suspicious photo, every piece of evidence that my challenge had led them to discover. The truth was out, spreading faster than wildfire and impossible to contain. Thursday morning, Marcus finally broke. "Chloe," he said, his voice cracking as he sat across from me at our kitchen table. "We need to talk." I looked up from my coffee, my expression perfectly composed. "About what, honey?" "You know what." His eyes were red-rimmed, his hair messy from running his hands through it. "About Jenny." "About everything." I set down my mug carefully, making sure my hands didn't shake. This was the moment I'd been planning for weeks, but now that it was here, I felt strangely calm. "I'm listening," I said. And for the first time in months, Marcus started telling me the truth. But by then, it was far too late for truth to save him. The viral explosion I'd created was just the beginning. What came next would destroy not just Marcus and Jenny, but expose a web of corruption and manipulation that reached far deeper than I'd ever imagined. And I was just getting started. Marcus's confession was pathetic. Sitting across from me at our kitchen table, he looked like a broken man, which I suppose he was. The viral firestorm I'd created had stripped away all his confidence, all his charm, all the smooth manipulation he'd used to juggle 2 relationships for months. "It started as nothing," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "Jenny was struggling with some advanced techniques, and I was just trying to help her, but she was so eager to learn, so grateful for the attention." I sat perfectly still, letting him dig his own grave with every word. "She looked up to me, Chloe. She made me feel important, special, like I was this incredible instructor who could change her life." He laughed bitterly. "God, I sound so stupid saying it out loud." "How long?" I asked, my voice steady. 4 months. He couldn't meet my eyes. I swear it wasn't planned. It just happened. 4 months. 4 months of lies, of secret meetings, of him coming home to me after being with her. 4 months of me trusting him, supporting him, loving him while he betrayed everything we'd built together. "Are you in love with her?" The question came out calmer than I felt. Marcus was quiet for a long time. When he finally answered, his words destroyed the last shred of hope I might have had for our marriage. "I don't know," he said. "Maybe. She makes me feel young again, excited about dance, about life. With her, I'm not just your husband or a studio instructor. I'm more." And there it was. The truth I'd known but hadn't wanted to face. This wasn't just about sex or midlife crisis or temporary insanity. Marcus had emotionally checked out of our marriage and checked into a relationship with a woman barely out of college. "I see," I said quietly. Then I stood up and walked to our home office, returning with a thick folder. Marcus's eyes widened as I set it on the table between us. "What's that?" "Evidence," I said simply. "Screenshots of every email you sent her. Photos of every location where you met. A timeline of every lie you told me. Bank records showing the expensive dinners and gifts you bought her with our money. Everything." His face went white. "Chloe, how did you?" "I also have testimony from 3 former students about your pattern of inappropriate relationships. Maya Chen was very helpful once I explained what I was investigating." Marcus's mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping for air. You've been investigating me?" "For weeks." I opened the folder and spread out the evidence like playing cards. "Did you really think I was so stupid, so trusting, that I wouldn't notice my husband was living a double life?" "This is insane," he said, but his voice was shaking. "You're acting like some kind of stalker." "I'm acting like a woman who deserves better than a cheating, manipulative husband who preys on his students." That's when he finally looked up at me and I saw something new in his eyes. Not just guilt or shame, but fear. "The dance challenge," he said slowly. "That viral thing everyone's been obsessing over. That was you." I smiled for the first time since this conversation started. "Took you long enough to figure it out." "You destroyed my career. The studio fired me yesterday. No one in the dance community will hire me. You ruined my life over a mistake." "A mistake?" My voice was deadly quiet. "Marcus, you had a 4-month affair with a student young enough to be your daughter. You manipulated her with promises about her career. You lied to me every single day. You risked my health by sleeping with both of us. You stole money from our joint account to fund your affair. And you have a history of inappropriate relationships with vulnerable students who trusted you." I leaned forward, my eyes locked on his. "That's not a mistake. That's a pattern of predatory behavior." Marcus's face crumpled. "Jenny's career is ruined too. She's getting death threats online. People are calling her a homewrecker and worse. She's just a kid, Chloe. She didn't deserve this." "You're right," I said. "She didn't deserve to be manipulated by her instructor. She didn't deserve to be used as a pawn in your midlife crisis. And she certainly didn't deserve to be thrown under the bus by the man who convinced her to destroy her reputation for him." For the first time, Marcus seemed to truly understand the scope of what he'd done. Not just to me, but to Jenny, to his other former students, to everyone who trusted him. "What do you want?" he asked finally. "I want you to pack your things and leave. Today. I want you to sign divorce papers giving me everything, the house, the savings, the business investments. I want you to agree to a settlement that compensates me for 4 years of marriage and the career damage this will cause me." "And if I don't?" I smiled again, and this time it was sharp enough to cut glass. "Then I release the rest of the evidence I've gathered, the photos of you with other students over the years, the financial records showing how you've been skimming money from the studio's books, the video footage I have of you and Jenny in her apartment." His face went from white to green. "You recorded us?" "I didn't have to. Jenny's neighbor was happy to share their security camera footage once I explained the situation. Apparently, they were getting tired of the noise you two were making." Marcus buried his face in his hands. "This is a nightmare. For you, maybe. For me, it's justice." But even as I sat there savoring his destruction, I had no idea that the viral explosion I'd created was about to expose something much bigger than just one cheating husband. The next morning, I woke up to my phone buzzing nonstop with notifications. The Shash Secret Places Challenge had evolved beyond just exposing Marcus and Jenny. It had become a movement. Women across the country were creating their own versions, using the dance to tell stories of betrayal and revenge. The hashtag had morphed into Dance Your Truth, and people were sharing incredibly personal stories of infidelity, abuse, and recovery through movement. But it was a message from a woman named Dr. Chloe Martinez that changed everything. "Hi, Chloe," the message read. "I know you're the creator behind the Secret Places Challenge. Your choreography style is unmistakable. I'm a psychology professor at UCLA, and I've been researching patterns of abuse in professional relationships. What you've exposed about Marcus Rivera is part of something much larger. Can we talk?" I agreed to meet Dr. Martinez that afternoon at a coffee shop in Westwood. She was a woman in her 50s with kind eyes and silver hair, but there was steel in her voice when she spoke. "Your viral challenge did something incredible," she said. "It didn't just expose one predatory instructor. It gave victims a framework to speak out about their experiences." She showed me her phone, scrolling through hundreds of videos that had been posted using my challenge format. Women sharing stories of teachers, coaches, mentors, and bosses who had abused their positions of power. "The dance community is particularly vulnerable to this kind of exploitation," she explained. "Young artists desperate for opportunities, older professionals with the power to make or break careers. It's a perfect breeding ground for predatory behavior." That's when she told me something that made my blood run cold. "Marcus Rivera isn't working alone," she said. "We've identified at least 12 other dance instructors in the LA area with similar patterns of behavior. They refer students to each other, share information about which young women might be vulnerable, even coordinate to provide alibis for each other's affairs." A network. Marcus wasn't just a cheating husband. He was part of an organized system of predators who had been exploiting young dancers for years. "How do you know all this?" I asked. "Because victims have been trying to report it for years," Dr. Martinez said. But individual complaints get dismissed. Young women are told they misunderstood situations, or that they're just jealous of other students getting more attention. The community protects these men because they're successful, because they bring in money, because nobody wants to believe that their respected instructors are predators. She leaned forward. "But your challenge changed that. It gave people a way to speak out without directly naming names. It created a safe space for victims to share their stories, and it's revealed patterns that we can't ignore anymore." Over the next hour, Dr. Martinez showed me evidence that made me sick to my stomach. Photos from dance events where multiple instructors were inappropriately touching students. Financial records showing how scholarship money was being used to buy silence from victims. Even a recording of a conversation where instructors were discussing which new students showed potential for special attention. "We have enough evidence to shut down 3 studios and file criminal charges against 7 instructors," she said. "But we need someone with credibility in the dance community to help us go public with this information." "What are you asking me to do?" "Create one more dance. one final challenge that exposes the entire network. Help us give every victim a voice. That night, I sat in my home studio, the same place where I'd planned my revenge against Marcus, and realized that my personal vendetta had accidentally uncovered something much more important than just one man's betrayal. I had the power to expose an entire system of abuse that had been destroying young women's lives for years. So I created one final dance. I called it the #Speak Through Movement Challenge, and it was different from anything I'd done before. Instead of telling one story, it provided a framework for victims to tell their own stories. The movements were universal: gestures of trust, betrayal, manipulation, and ultimately empowerment. I posted it with a caption that changed everything. This is for every young artist who was told that inappropriate behavior was just part of paying dues. This is for every dreamer who had their passion weaponized against them. This is for every victim who was silenced by systems designed to protect predators instead of students. Dance your truth. We're listening now. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Within 24 hours, over 1,000 videos had been posted using the challenge format. Dancers sharing stories of abuse, manipulation, and survival. Parents revealing how their children had been victimized by trusted instructors. Even some instructors coming forward to admit their own complicity in covering up abuse. The dance community was in chaos, but it was the good kind of chaos. The kind that happens when systems of oppression finally crumble under the weight of truth. 3 days later, the FBI announced a federal investigation into organized exploitation in the Los Angeles dance community. 7 instructors were arrested, including Marcus. 4 studios were shut down pending investigation. The state launched a task force to investigate similar patterns in other artistic communities. Marcus's affair with Jenny had become the thread that unraveled an entire web of predatory behavior. But the most beautiful part? I didn't just destroy my cheating husband's life. I accidentally started a movement protected countless young artists from the kind of exploitation that had been normalized for too long. 2 weeks after Marcus was arrested, I got a message from Jenny. "I know you probably hate me," it said, "but I wanted to thank you. What Marcus did to me wasn't love. It was manipulation. I was too young and too desperate to see it, but your challenge helped me understand that I was a victim, not a villain. I'm in therapy now, and I'm learning to dance for myself again, instead of for the approval of men who saw me as prey. Thank you for giving me my voice back." I cried reading that message. Not tears of sadness, but tears of relief. Because I realized that my revenge had become something bigger than just personal justice. It had become healing, not just for me, but for every woman who had been silenced by systems designed to protect powerful men. 3 months later, I was featured on the cover of Dance magazine with the headline, "The Choreographer Who Changed Everything." I'd gained over 10 million followers across all social media platforms, landed brand deals worth more than I'd ever imagined, and been invited to speak at universities about using art as activism. But more importantly, I'd found my purpose. I now run a nonprofit organization called Movement for Change that teaches young artists how to recognize and report predatory behavior. We provide legal support for victims, educational resources for parents and students, and advocacy for policy changes that protect vulnerable performers. Marcus is serving a 7-year sentence for multiple counts of sexual exploitation and financial fraud. The network of predatory instructors I helped expose is facing federal charges that could result in decades of prison time. Jenny is thriving. She transferred to a reputable dance conservatory on the East Coast, where she's studying under instructors who value her talent without trying to exploit it. She's become an advocate for student rights and recently testified before Congress about the need for better protections in artistic education. As for me, I'm happier than I've ever been. Not because I destroyed the man who betrayed me, though I won't lie, that part was satisfying, but because I learned that sometimes the most devastating revenge is simply telling the truth and letting it spread like wildfire. My viral dance challenge didn't just expose one affair. It exposed an entire culture of abuse and gave victims the tools to fight back. And that's a performance I'll never regret choreographing. But here's the thing that still gives me chills when I think about it. What started as personal revenge became something that saved lives. How many young women are safer now because one cheating husband pushed his wife too far? How many predators are behind bars because I refuse to suffer in silence? Sometimes the most beautiful dances are the ones that burn everything down so something better can grow in its place. And sometimes the best revenge isn't just getting even, it's changing the world.